Again, I reiterate Shantanu sends his apologies as he's facing some COVID-related deaths and crisis in his family in India. I'll start this with a little introduction. So our group has been studying muscle kinematics with velocity encoded phase contrast MR imaging for a very long time. And we've been extracting strains and 2D strain tensors, and a little bit explain what extra information strain tensors and strain rate tensors provide over just simple strain measurements. So this modality that we use for MR imaging, it's a convenient way to map muscle velocities under different contraction paradigms. But there are some limitations to it. It's long acquisition times, means in order to acquire the image, we need to do something like 53 or more repeat contractions, so that our earlier studies have been limited to lower percent MVCs, which is in the range of 30 to 35%. It also precludes the acquisition of multiple slices. So earlier we were doing only a single slice and extracting the strain information in the slice. But as everybody knows, it's the actual quantity is a three-dimensional quantity. And it also prohibits, like for aging populations and weaker subjects, acquisitions because of the repeated contractions that are necessary. So while I won't go too much into the topic of the technical developments, it took extensive technical development to reduce the scan times, and we applied a general technique called compressed sensing, which allows us to reduce scan time and also increase the temporal resolution. With this decreased scan times, what we were able to do is perform multi-slice dynamic imaging. That means we were able to acquire, in this case, 3 slices, consecutive slices at multiple levels of MVC, 30, 40, and 65 in young and senior subjects. From this, and I'll show more how exactly we do it, we extracted 3D strain. That means the strain in 3 dimension, and strain rate, which is the rate of change of strain, because we already had velocity information. The very first index that we could easily extract was directly extract for strain rate, whereas displacements have to be calculated from the velocity images. But it can be, and therefore we extracted 3D strain and some invariance. That means something that does not change with the orientation of the muscle, which is 2 quantities. One is volumetric strain, that is the incremental change in volume. And we anticipated that might be clinically relevant as it relates to intramuscular pressure, and there might be an opportunity to actually get individual muscle forces. And then shear strain, and shear strain can be measured in different frames, meaning if you look at that strain in different angles or different frames of reference, you may get different shear strains. But this is the maximum shear strain that we can have. That was the shear. And what we anticipated, or our hypothesis, was that the shear that we measure, though we don't have the resolution to distinguish between shear in the muscle and shear in the endomysium, we postulated that what we are measuring with MR is the shear in the endomysium. And based on computational model that had postulated this as a mechanism of lateral force transmission, we felt the shear strain would be a surrogate marker of lateral force transmission. So this is our experimental setup. As you see here, the patient lies in the scanner and is provided a feedback of their of the force that they're exerting. So this is isometric contraction. So you can see in the graph that's shown to which is actually the one that's shown to the subject, the target force that they have to reach and the force that the current subject is exerting. And from that, we get the output of the force that's exerted that we average over to get the average MVC of the imaging study. So in this particular one, we did 22 subjects with young in the 31-year range and 10 in the 75-year range. The MVC was significantly lower in the senior cohort. And we got it at 3 different maximum voluntary contractions, 30, 40, and 60. We also acquired diffusion weighted images, but I'm not going into the what the actual technique is. I just want to say that diffusion weighted images provide you a map of the fiber directions. It actually provides you the map of not only the fiber direction, but also provides you how the diffusion is in the fiber cross section. So essentially you have a frame of reference that's defined by this diffusion, but principally what you're able to get is how are the fibers aligned in the image. Just looking at the image, you don't know how the muscle fibers run, right? So the diffusion weighted images give you allow you to track fibers internally. I won't go into the compressed sensing, but just to give you an idea, that was a pretty complicated technique to implement in order to reduce scan times. It essentially is based on randomly sampling the imaging phase encodes. And this was the orientation we selected for acquiring the image. And this particular selection of the orientation is based on the fact that we have we are able to see the fibers of the medial gastrocs is optimized for the medial gastrocs that will run in the plane of this image. And here you can see where this dotted line shows where the MR acquisition of the temporal frames with 131 millisecond resolution was acquired over this entire frame. So again, I won't go into the image processing except to show that at the output of the image processing, we were able to get the strain. And we calculated 2 types of strains, Lagrangian and Eulerian, which was simply with respect to what is the reference frame and the strain rate. And then we were able to calculate some indices like volumetric strain, shear strain. This was done in the principal axis, which means these are the maximum values of the normal strains and the shear strains. And if this was aligned to the fiber, so if our maximum strain or contraction occurred along the fiber, then we wouldn't have to rotate it to the fiber frame of reference, or alternatively, there'd be no angle between the fiber and the strains that we measure. But we always got a consistent angle that is different between these two. So physiologically, it means that in the fiber frame of reference, there should be a shear. And so we also rotated to the fiber frame. How did we rotate it? We rotated it by using the diffusion imaging. And we have, so this is kind of the, I just want to give a few explanations, a few of these labels. So you can see the compression along the fiber. And when you rotate it to the fiber frame of reference, we should get the strain in that direction. We should get the strain. And because we're measuring a tensor quantity, we can get the strains in the fiber cross section as well. So no other imaging modality really can give you this, unless maybe 3D ultrasound with speckle tracking. But MR has this, MR is inherently 3D, so we can get that. And the other one in green shows what are the maximum values of the strain. And you can see there's an angle between the maximum value of the strain, compressive strain, and the fiber direction, which we call the strain fiber angle. And the shear in the endomysium is demonstrated also in this image. You can see that the endomysium that is attached to the fiber that's contracting is sheared. That means is held at one end constant, and the other end is pulled along with the muscle. And this shear is what we postulate is what we are measuring with MR, and that this shear is the mechanism by which lateral transmission occurs. So this is a surrogate marker of that. So this is just a picture that kind of summarizes what were the images that we acquired. These are the strain rate maps and for a young subject. And these are the strain maps on the right side within this panel. And this is the force curve. And the dots actually show you where exactly these maps were. So remember that actually we would have a temporal variation. So we'll actually have maps every 131 milliseconds, but we chose, I'm displaying only the maps that were acquired at either at the maximum force level, which was the peak strain, or in case of strain rate, it is actually where the where the force, rate of change of forces are maximum. So that's why they're displaced where the maximums occur. And in general, you can see that these three columns are the three different MVCs. In general, we see the trend that with increasing MVC, strains and strain rates increase in young as well as old on the right side. As well as you can see that between young and old, it takes a little bit of peering at it. The values decrease in magnitude of strains, strain rates, as well as shear strains and volumetric strains. But significant differences are summarized below. The significant differences were found in maximum shear strains between age groups. So you can see maximum shear strains in the soleus. So only the soleus and the GM were evaluated. Maximum shear strains decreased with age. And principal strains also decreased with age in the soleus significantly. And in this case, the in plane. In plane means the strain, that's the radial expansion to balance the compression along the fiber. In force levels, we found that the significant changes only occurred in the medial gastrocs. And let me then go on quickly to, this is just the fiber aligned strain rate. So what I showed you here in this previous slide is everything where the maximum normal strains are displayed and the maximum shear strain as well, which is the last row. And here I'm displaying the images that were rotated using the maps that are shown here. These are the diffusion maps that the color blue in this shows that the fibers are running basically in the superior to inferior direction with some component of, because there is a pennation angle to it, in the right to left direction as well. So those strains from the previous image were rotated to match this one. And you can kind of appreciate that all values are lower. Nothing really significantly different is popping out, either with MVC or with age. So I won't go into it. This table summarizes the significant differences that I mentioned earlier in the principal strains. And this one shows that for the fiber frame of reference, the maximum difference was found in age between in the shear strain in the phase that is represented by the fiber and the secondary eigenvector. So what all that means, I'll try to put it down in the discussion. So this is, I can say, is the first report of 3D strain rates. In the principal axis, strain and strain rate values were comparable with other reports from MRI and ultrasound. Absolute values of strain increased with percent effort, though I say that the maximum change was between 0 and 30%, and then the trend was lower between 30 and 60%. And this is in keeping with ultrasound and other architectural measurements that show that there is a high initial change and a kind of a trend to for the slope to change. Then we also saw that significant changes in strain were only obtained as a function of MVC in the MG, but not in the soleus. And this shows that it's possible that this kind of reflects the recruitment pattern of the muscles, meaning MG, the soleus is a slow twitch muscle and possibly
Domani mattina mi ha chiesto la Giulia lei se può venire in ambulatorio.
Someone needs to mute that. Yeah, so it shows the soleus is probably recruited first between the 0 to 30%, and the gastrocs is recruited later on, so that we see significant changes in the gastrocs and not in the soleus. So you can see that this gives you an idea how we can measure or at least see what different muscles are recruited. Another thing consistently seen was that there was a great anisotropy of deformation in plane. That means when you have a contraction in the muscle, you expect radial expansion, but this is not an isotropic radial expansion. It's preferentially only in one direction. And our own computational models have shown that anisotropic deformation in the in plane actually leads to greater force. So this is something that we want to investigate as well. Another thing that we had anticipated was that volumetric strain may be an indicator of force, but this did not actually pan out. In an incompressible tissue, you do expect it to be close to zero. It's small, but not exactly zero. It was positive in the soleus and negative in the MG. So that's a really strange phenomena, but then we can see that measurements of volumetric strain are possible, and that may differ with age. It didn't differ with age because it really didn't have, it was such a small value, but so further experiments for measurement of volumetric strain we plan. Then we found significant changes with age in plane strain and in the shear strain. So consistently, I can say across all our dynamic studies, the strain parameter that really differs with age is the shear strain or shear strain rate. So this may be related to a stiffer ECM in the aging muscle that restricts radial expansion, which
3
then
minutes left.
Longitudinal contraction. The computational models, as I had alluded before, this is from Sharafi and Blemke, showed that the pathway of transmission of lateral force or for non-spanning muscle fibers is due to the shearing. So our hypothesis is that the shear strain that we measure is a measure of the shear in the endomysium, and the reduced shear strain or strain rate with age is a reflection of the reduced lateral transmission of force. So yes, the compressive strain decreases with age, but in addition to that, the mode of transmission is also decreased. So currently we are working on a hierarchical multi-scale model that reveals how age-associated changes in passive materials influence force generation capacity. And we actually have shown that modeling the endomysium as stiff and thicker with age is able to match our experimental observations on changes in strain rate. So this is this kind of computational modeling can give us the link between our MR measure and the microscopic analysis of how the endomysium shear leads to lateral transmission of force. So that's two things that we want to conclude. That we want to say is that strain is a measure of muscle function and probably even as a marker of individual muscle force, and shear strain a potential surrogate marker of lateral transmission of forces. I won't go much into fiber aligned strains and strain rate, except to show that we need to do a little further work because one, we used fiber directions in the relaxed position, whereas the fibers are actually rotated by the time. So we really have to track fibers. At this point, we didn't track fibers. We use the voxel-based information. So we have to track the fibers using the velocity information to know the fibers at the later, at the peak contraction state and then rotate it. But again, in spite of the fact that this gave kind of a smaller values, significant differences were again seen in the shear in the fiber in plane fiber cross section, showing that shear seems to be a very strong indicator or which changes strongly with age. So an anisotropy deformation, that's another factor that needs investigation to see what that could potentially indicate for force generation. We didn't see much changes of the anisotropy of deformation with age, but that's potentially something that probably we could investigate. So future work is experimental data to validate computational models. That's our current work. We already have preliminary information showing that's true. Then strain indices to be correlated with biopsy data that we're acquiring from the MG. And just some very preliminary data shows that the fiber aligned strain rate that we found in the FS plane does correlate with collagen 6. And collagen 6 is a microfibrillar collagen that connects cells with fibrillar collagens. So this could indicate a decrease in lateral force transfer. So what we are finding in the fibril shear strain may be a reflection of the decrease of collagen 6 with age. So our future work is to do fully compressed sensing 3D imaging. That is not sequential acquisition, but a volume acquisition. And then use computing fiber aligned strains with temporal fiber tracking from initial state. So thank you. This was funded by NIA, National Institute of Aging.
Thank you, Usha, for this really, really exciting presentation.
And congratulations again for this really innovative work. As you know, I'm particularly supportive and interested in the work, and simply
well,
because
you introduced us to lateral transmission of force in the first place.
and but at the moment, the MRI is the only method to measure fiber shear, and which, in conjunction to longitudinal shortening, could afford us an insight into the forces developed in the muscle, along the muscle, and across the muscle. And as you pointed out, this fiber shear could be related to, or could be indicative to lateral force transmission. So I know there is a lot of work to do, but it's very exciting. But I don't want to say too much. I think if there are any other questions, please go ahead. Everybody seems to be convinced. Okay, so
sorry, maybe I can ask one provocative question.
Please.
I love the work that you and Shantanu are doing. It's great. I think somebody with your technical skills in MRI needs to do that study that you just showed on a living animal, and then take the animal out of the MR and do the correct analysis of the tissue properties. Because I don't doubt your MR data. I think the key question is, what do the MR data refer to? Certainly it's logical that you might be getting shear stresses and strains in your connective tissue, but I think there are other possible explanations. And the neat thing is, if you do an animal, you can do transgenic animals where you can selectively change collagen 6 or muscle fiber connective tissue connections and causally connect your MR images with the animals. It will be very tough, but I think those would be really cool. And it's going to take people like you to do them.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. I think we actually are facing that, because as you said, this is this resolution is not at the resolution that we are looking for, making conclusions about where the shear is coming from. So we are kind of using computational models, but it's still, computational models are only, we basically are validating the model by seeing whether they match our strain measurements, and then going back to see what can be changed at the microscopic level that changes the, so that we can say, okay, there is a link between the shear in the endomysium. But I agree with you, could be shear in the muscles as well. I mean, so there's no a priori reason, but it just, at that time that Blemkov had this paper, and it seemed to sync with the fact that could be a source of the decrease in force, that not just the force, just the contractile amount of contractile force from muscle mass loss, but also force transmission pathway loss. But conclusive proofs, yes. We also are doing biopsy, which hopefully, again, that's a secondary thing. We cannot manipulate anything, and we can only take it from a single point and a single muscle, and not going to be periodic, it cannot be repeated biopsies. So yeah, I do say animals, but I can also tell you that animals pose their own unique problems for doing MRI, and they're not going to contract, so it has to be stimulated imaging. So, but I know Shantanu has already tried it, and it has worked in a preliminary way, but maybe your suggestion gives us more motivation. Thank you.
Indeed, it is a very good suggestion, and so it is, of course, it is true that in many countries doing experiments in animals is more difficult than doing experiments in humans, from an ethical point of view. But nevertheless, the idea, the concept is, of course, is extremely valid, and if it were feasible, it would be a way to go.